Hello everyone, this is Rig. Welcome to an episode on Reformation. Here in this episode, we will discuss about the causes of Reformation. In our last video, we have discussed about modern age and Renaissance. Please go through that video in order to understand this better. This video is tailored according to the syllabus of ICSE board of class 8. However, anyone from any board interested in this topic can go through this video. It will help you a lot. Carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points, and if you have any doubts you can write it in comments. I will try my best to answer. So beginning with Reformation. What is the meaning of Reformation? Roman Catholicism dominance. At the start of 16th century, Western Europe followed only Roman Catholicism. So this is the earliest form of Christianity where it was very complex and conservative. So at the start of 16th century, whole of Western Europe followed Christianity according to the principles of Roman Catholicism. General councils and church decay. So, despite several general councils for reforms, disputes and lax practices spread within the church. So, there were several grounds on which it was thought that reformation could be done, and many such meetings were conducted, but at the end of the day, nothing happened. And so church became corrupted and decayed. The system of church, the system of dedication towards religion on behalf of the church decayed a lot. Corrupt papacy. The papacy was deeply corrupt. Monasticism and scholastic theology had declined. Papacy means authority of the Pope. So Pope became corrupt, and monasticism and scholastic theology had declined. So the monastic practices had become corrupted. Means the Pope and his bishops engaged in corrupt practices. Revival of classics. Greek and Roman classics were revived, leading to a spirit of inquiry and independence. So, as we know that it was the time of Renaissance or Reformation, so during that time, Greek and Roman texts, which existed before the birth of Christianity, they were revived once again, and it led to the spirit of inquiry. People started questioning the religion, that is Christianity, and also they became a bit more independent. Printing press and scripture. The printing press was invented and the Greek New Testament was republished. So, printing press was invented, that means the spread of knowledge became faster, because one book to be copied with the help of scribes required months of time. That same can be done within days or weeks. So printing press helped a lot in spread of old scriptures and knowledge. True Christianity. The Reformation was aimed at restoring true Christianity, which was not corrupted like the thing that Europe was having at that point of time. Evil church practices. The church which was filled with evil practices. Clergymen neglected duties and were interested in politics. So the church people or the clergymen, their main intention was not to serve God or the people. Their main intention was to have influence in politics and to have power. So that is how churches became evil. Luxurious clergies. Many clergymen had amassed wealth and led luxurious life. So they had, the thing was that clergymen was supposed to do selfless service towards society and God. But many clergymen took a lot of wealth, they accumulated a lot of wealth and lived a highly luxurious life. Rise of middle class. A strong middle class arose, resenting the upper class dominance of the church. So there was a strong middle class and they resented the upper class which dominated over the church practices. So this middle class wanted the church to be impartial, to be servants of God. Meaning of Reformation. Reformation comes from the Latin word reformare, meaning to change or form again. So a new thing should be created again. That was the motive of Reformation. And this word Reformation comes from the Latin word reformare. Protestant movement. Reform is also called Protestant movement, seeking positive change in religious and social institution. So Catholicism is the oldest form of Christianity. It became corrupted, and so Protestants arose, which aimed to reform the social institutions, mainly the church and the monarchy. So that was all about what is meant by Reformation. Now we will move towards the causes. So causes of Reformation. What are the main causes? Here we will discuss a summary and then we will move to the causes one by one. So fall of Constantinople. The Ottoman Empire under Muhammad II conquered Constantinople. In many places it is also written as Mehmet. Those are same people. So Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople and later on it was named as Istanbul, and all happened in 1453. Exodus of Greek scholars. So all the Greek scholars feared persecution and so they fled to various Italian cities. Because of fear of persecution by the Islamic rulers, the Greek scholars went ahead and left Constantinople and fled to various Italian cities. Migration to key cities. Scholars moved to Venetia, Milan, Naples, Sicily, and Rome. So these educated people from Constantinople went to the cities of Milan, Naples, Sicily, and Rome, and thus they spread their knowledge in those particular cities, leading to Reformation. New learning introduced. They brought with them deep knowledge of subjects like history, geography, philosophy, and mathematics. They were all very educated people, the people who fled Constantinople. And so, wherever they stayed, they introduced the knowledge of history, geography, philosophy, and particularly mathematics. Cultural exchange. This migration exposed Europeans to advanced Greek thought. So, in Constantinople, Catholicism did not spread its wings. Constantinople was mainly about innovative ideas, scholarship, and Greek and Roman classical knowledge. So, their migration from Constantinople led the Europeans to again reaffirm their belief on Greek thoughts. Learning center. The fall of Constantinople was a blow to Christian learning centers. So, with the fall of Constantinople, all the Christian learning centers suffered a lot because it was the headquarter of classical learning. Renaissance sparked. The scholars' influence helped to ignite Renaissance movement in Italy. So educated people wherever they go, they will spread their knowledge, and that is how Renaissance sparked with the fall of Constantinople. Decline of feudalism. This was the first main cause of reformation. Decline of feudalism. 13th century decline. Feudalism began to decline by the end of 13th century. The most important characteristic feature of Middle Age in Europe was feudalism, where the farmers were forced to work under a headman, and that is a feudal lord, and they were not at all paid properly. They were tortured upon, and so that system is called feudalism. It started to decline by the end of 13th century. France and Italy shift. By 1500 AD, feudalism had almost disappeared from France and Italy. So by 1500, the main seat of European power, Italy and France, they did not have feudalism anymore. Life system changes. Feudalism was the main system of life during the medieval period. So the most important characteristic feature of medieval period in Europe was feudalism. Middle class rise. Traders and businessmen rose as a new middle class. So with the decline of feudalism, there was a rise in middle class. This middle class people did not have a lot of money, but they were very much educated, and they joined professions like trade and business. So a traders and businessmen arose as the middle class. The middle class played a major role in weakening feudalism. So, when you are educated, you will protest against the bad practices happening in your society. And that is how, with the rise of educated middle class, feudalism weakened. Middle class provided the financial support needed by the monarchs. So monarchs were in scarcity of money, and that money was provided by the middle class who joined professions like trade and commerce. So all the monarchs were in support of the middle class mainly because they needed money and middle class provided it. Army funding. With funds from this class, kings could maintain independent armies. Now, kings could maintain independent armies. They did not have to depend on authorization from the Pope or the church in order to go to war against someone. They had their army. The army, which was built with the help of money from the middle class, with the help of funding from the middle class. Less dependence on lords. Kings became less dependent on feudal lords, weakening their feudal structure. So the feudalism was not existing anymore. So the feudal lords became less powerful, middle class became more powerful, kings became dependent on the middle class rather than the feudal lords. Now, what was the impact of crusades? In our last video, we have discussed in detail about crusades. Now we will see what was the impact of crusades on society. Christian Muslim wars. The crusades were wars between Christians and Muslims from the 11th to 14th century. So these were specific wars between Christians and Muslims, and it existed from 11th to 14th centuries, roughly 250 to 300 years. Muslim victory. Ultimately, the Muslims won, but the Crusades impacted Europe significantly. So, when a huge group of people is going to another area to fight for their own God, they will not only exchange blood or weapons, they will exchange knowledge also. So, Eastern contact. Western scholars came in contact with more civilized and polished Eastern world. So, Eastern world at that point of time, mainly the part of Central Asia, was very much educated and had a polished, advanced society. The Western scholars came into contact with the Eastern world with the help of crusades. Knowledge transfer. As I said, Western scholars accessed new ideas and knowledge from the East. So it was not only blood being exchanged, but also new ideas and knowledge from the East came to the Western society when the Western soldiers or the knights visited the East for the holy wars. Learning centers. Scholars visited Cairo, Kufa, and Cardona universities. So these were very advanced universities of the East. The Western scholars, when they went for crusades, they also visited all these universities. New ideas spread. They learned new concepts which were then spread across Europe. So, all the new concepts like building castles, usage of gunpowder, all these things started when the Western scholars visited East. Impetus to Renaissance. This knowledge exchange contributed greatly to the Renaissance movement. So, with the help of exchange of this knowledge, Renaissance started in Europe, or Renaissance was enhanced in Europe. Decline of the influence of the church. So as we can understand, when there is an educated middle class, they will go against the conservative systems of the society, that is the systems of the church. So medieval church power. The church dominated medieval society but began to face resistance. Church was the dominating factor in the medieval society. Not the king, not the feudal lords, but the church. The king did whatever the church asked him to do. So the power of the church in the medieval society declined when it came to the modern age. 1296 event. In 1296 AD, King Philip IV of France arrested the Pope, making him a prisoner. So, Pope was the ultimate authority for the Christians. Today also in religious matters, Pope is the ultimate authority. However, in 1296 AD, King Philip IV of France arrested the Pope, making him a prisoner. That gave a huge blow to the prestige and authority of the Pope. This significantly damaged the Pope's authority and power. So when a highly powerful person becomes arrested, then there will be a decline in that person's prestige or in that post's prestige. And that happened when King Philip IV of France arrested the Pope in 1296 AD. Loss of faith. People lost faith in the church due to its excessive rituals and corruption. So all the people lost their faith and belief towards church because church was becoming corrupted day by day, and the practices which did not have any meaning, or the practices which was the corrupt side of the society, became prevalent in the church. So people lost their belief on the church people. Temporal power challenged. Strong monarchs began challenging the church's temporal power. So strong monarchs who was there, uh, they became strong because they got a lot of help from the middle class. So now they are not dependent on the church anymore. They began challenging the power of the church. Shift in focus. People preferred focusing on present life rather than afterlife promises. So people focused on living their present life in a very good manner. The church always said stuffs like, if you suffer here, after your death you will go to heaven and there you will have a prize, or there your life will be very good. Now people said that I don't care about my future after death, what will happen, I don't care. Right now I need happiness, I need freedom. So that was the focus of the people in modern age, when they focused more, or they paid more importance to their present life rather than afterlife, which the church promised. Discontent with the ideals. The medieval ideals of worldliness and asceticism were no longer satisfying to the masses. So, all the medieval ideas of conservativeness, worldliness, and asceticism were no more liked by the people. People wanted to have freedom and enjoy their present life. Wealth and prosperity. So wealth of the people increased with the coming of the modern age. 12th and 13th century trade. The Crusades boosted trade between eastern and western regions during the 12th and 13th century. So during the 12th and 13th centuries, as the holy wars were happening, trade was also happening between the east and the west, and with trade comes finance or money. Economic growth in Italy. Italy saw a major increase in trade and commerce. So Italy was the hub of Renaissance. Renaissance spread from Italy to other European countries. So at first only Italy saw a major increase in trade and commerce. Wealthy class emerged, and with the increase in trade, traders emerged, bankers emerged, manufacturers also became wealthy and influential. So these classes of people who were not given any importance before, they became wealthy and influential. Support to artists. Now with the help of money comes in art and creativity. So that also happened in Italy. The wealthy class supported and patronized artists and scholars. So they sponsored, patronizing means sponsoring, so they sponsored different artists and scholars to have their creative adventures. So, thus, the wealthy class supported and patronized different artists and scholars. Cultural refinement. They aimed for refinement in all areas of culture and behavior. So, all of their focus was on reformation or refinement, especially in the areas of culture and behavior. Social behavior rules. Wealthy individuals studied etiquette books to improve social behavior. So, the wealthy people learned good manners and good social behaviors which actually benefited the society. So they became more polished and they followed manners and etiquette. Travel and liberalization. New travel opportunities helped broaden European outlooks. So, with the coming of new ideas, people began to travel to distant lands, and with the help of these new travel opportunities, the European outlook towards the world became more liberal. This cultural exchange led to liberalization and spread of new ideas. So, with the help of this cultural exchange, there was liberalization, means people became more open minded, and thus new ideas spread. Invention of printing press and paper. So these were the main technological advancements of the modern age. Printing press and paper. Printing press invention happened with the help of Gutenberg, a person named Gutenberg of Mainz in 1454 AD. He invented the printing press which helped revive learning. So with the help of printing press, the books which were spread to the people very slowly became to be spreaded very fast. So the Gutenberg printing press helped to print books which or else required to be copied by hand, and that could take months. So that was the importance of printing press. Spread to Italy and England. Many printers appeared in Italy. In England, Caxton introduced it in 1477. So many printers form there were a separate profession for the printing people, and they were the printers. So many printers originated in many cities of Italy, and they slowly spread to all other parts of Europe, especially in England. And in England it was introduced in 1477. So paper availability. The invention of paper in abundance at reasonable price supported the popularity of books. Now paper is also available and printing press is also available. So with the help of paper and printing press, mass production started happening. Knowledge distribution. So books were now widely available, aiding to the spread of knowledge and ideas. You can understand this. More printing materials are there in the society, more knowledge will be spread. Earlier methods. Previously, books were manually copied by monastic scribes or printed in cloisters. So, books were previously copied by people called scribes, and these scribes were mainly church workers. It required huge amount of time to make a copy of a book. That same thing which was done in months could now be done in a matter of weeks. Next comes the church restrictions. How were the practices of the church restricted in case of printing? So only those books approved by the church were accessible for public before printing press. So the only book available in the market had to be the one which was approved by the church. But with the help of printing press, people could print whatever they wanted. Boost to Renaissance. Printing press contributed significantly to Renaissance by making learning accessible. So with the help of printing press, Renaissance became more and more prevalent because people had access to learning and materials of learning. Our next point of discussion is again the fall of Constantinople. Constantinople fell to the Turks or the Ottoman Turks in 1453, leading to an indirect push to Renaissance. So in 1453, Constantinople was captured by the Ottoman Turks, and Constantinople was the headquarter for learning and scholarship in Europe and also in Central Asia. So scholars migration. With the fall of Constantinople, the Greek and Roman scholars fled from Constantinople to various parts of Europe. So when Constantinople fell, the scholars from various parts of Europe from Constantinople went to various parts of Europe and spread their knowledge and ideas. Literature carried. They brought valuable Greek and Roman literary works with them. So with them going physically to Europe, they also carried different books or sources of knowledge, mainly the Greek and Roman literary works. Language spread. These scholars began teaching Greek and Latin in European countries. So they taught Greek and Latin in many European countries, and thus people became accustomed to the classical knowledge which existed before the coming of Christian Catholicism. Scholar Erasmus. Erasmus studied in, this is an example of a scholar who came from Constantinople. So one such important scholar was Erasmus, who studied ancient works, edited them, and challenged the distortions by the priests and theologians. So real work actually existed, but the church twisted those real knowledge to their own advantage. And Erasmus was one such person who actually studied the original ancient texts and challenged what the church has written. Erasmus published a fresh edition of New Testament in Greek to clarify original meanings. So Erasmus published a New Testament in Greek language, and that testament was not like what the church says about Christianity. That testament was about real Christianity without any distortions by the church. So, opposition to intolerance. He spoke against religious intolerance and persecution. So, he spoke a lot against the church, particularly the practice of religious intolerance by the church. Promotion of goodwill. Erasmus promoted intelligence and goodwill through his teachings. So, through his teachings, Erasmus promoted intelligence and goodwill and harmony among the people. Role of progressive rulers and nobles. So it was not only the educated people who helped to bring reformation, but also there were many good nobles and kings. Support from monarchs. Rulers like Francis I of France, Henry VIII of England, Charles V of Spain, and Christian II of Denmark supported learning. So these were important monarchs who supported learning, who challenged the authority of the church. So popes like Nicholas V and Leo X encouraged revival of Greek and Roman classics. So after saying all the bad things about church, let me clarify, all the popes were not corrupted. There were a few good people in the church like Pope Nicholas V and Leo X. They themselves encouraged the reformation within the church by revival of Greek and Roman classics. So Florence Medici family. The Medici family established an academy in Florence for classical studies. So these were important rich families like the Medici family who established academy in Florence for classical studies. They studied mainly Platonic philosophy. They promoted the Platonic philosophy and study of classical knowledge. They promoted the philosophy of scholars like Plato, Socrates, and they revived classical knowledge. So it was the funding of monarchs and nobles which led to the Reformation, and that funding they could gain only with the help of middle class. Support to artists: Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Bertoldo received patronage from rulers and popes. So these were great artists as we know of them today. So they received a lot of patronage and funding from rulers and popes. Integration of art and learning. Artists and scholars together contributed to cultural and intellectual revival. So, scholars and artists together contributed to the revival of classical knowledge or to the bringing of progressiveness in modern age Europe. Geographical voyages. It was not only that everything was happening in Europe. Europe ventured to the outside world. So Marinus compass, the invention of Marinus compass helped determine sailing direction. So compass, the magnetic compass was created in about 12th or 13th century AD, but it was modified to be a Marinus compass, and that helped to determine the direction in which sailing could take place. So navigators got a lot of help with the invention of mariner's compass. Exploration of seas. It enabled people to sail to distant seas with confidence. So in our last video we have discussed the different voyages of Ferdinand Magellan, then Vasco da Gama, before that Christopher Columbus. So please go through that video. There is a separate section about geographical voyages. It will help you to understand it better. So new geographic ideas. Discoveries challenge traditional beliefs about the world's shape and size. The Roman Church led the people to believe that Earth was flat. So with the help of deep sea voyages and new discoveries, people came to know that the Earth is round. So it challenged the traditional beliefs about the world's shape and size. Telescope allowed people to study the sky and distant celestial objects. So with the coming of Galileo, telescope was invented. Even though he was tortured, but still telescope helped a lot to observe the celestial movements and clear a lot of misconceptions, like the sun was in the in the center of solar system. uh, this, as we know of it today, came with the coming of modern age. Before, people believed in a geocentric theory. That means earth was in the center of solar system. That was the belief of medieval people. Solar system study. These tools led to deeper understanding of the solar system. People could understand the planetary movements for real. They did not have to believe whatever the church said. So challenge to church views. This new knowledge often contradicted teachings of the system of the church. So teachings of the existing system were challenged with the coming of these new views and technological advancements. Broadened horizons. These voyages marked a beginning in exploration and learning. So, with the coming of these voyages, there was a beginning in exploration and people learned a lot of new things. Now, we will go through the questions and answers which will help you to understand this chapter in a much better way. Explain Reformation. The Reformation was a religious movement in the 16th century to reform the Roman Catholic Church. The church had become corrupt, and clergymen neglected their duties, living in luxury and involving themselves in politics. Despite many councils, reforms failed. The invention of printing press and the Greek New Testament helped people rediscover true Christianity. A strong middle class also supported the movement. The word Reformation comes from the Latin reformare, meaning to form again. It is also called the Protestant movement. How did the decline of feudalism Help in Reformation. Feudalism declined by the end of 13th century and disappeared from France and Italy by 1500 AD. A new middle class of traders and businessmen emerged and gave financial help to kings. Kings then raised strong armies without depending on feudal lords. This weakened the feudal structure and reduced the church's power, indirectly supporting the Reformation. Why was the printing press and paper important in Reformation? The printing press was invented by Gutenberg in 1454 and Caxton introduced it in England in 1477. Paper became cheap and available in plenty. Earlier books were handwritten in cloisters and approved by the church. The press made books affordable and helped spread knowledge. The Bible and the Greek New Testament became accessible, allowing people to question church practices and support the Reformation. How did the influence of church decline? In 1296 AD, King Philip IV of France made the Pope a prisoner, which reduced the Pope's authority. People began losing faith in the Church due to its rituals and corruption. Strong kings challenged its power, and people focused more on life than the afterlife. The Church's influence weakened, allowing reformist ideas to grow. What role did the progressive rulers of Europe play? Progressive rulers like Francis I, Henry VIII, Charles V, and Christian II supported learning. Popes like Nicholas V and Leo X encouraged classical revival. The Medici family set up an academy in Florence. Artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci got patronage. These rulers helped spread Renaissance and Reformation ideas. So that was all about the causes of Reformation. In our next video, we will discuss about Martin Luther King and the impact of Reformation. Follow this playlist on class 8 in order to understand your syllabus better, and this also has question and their answers which will help you in your exams. Thank you so much for your love and support.